Does Charlie Kaufman suck? That is the question we ask here today on House of Decline.
Welcome.
Always, we have Steven.
Hello.
And we have a special guest, Kramer, who is
What
a
up,
film
what up?
person,
Hi,
poetry
Kramer.
person, and all around good dude. And he's got some thoughts on Kaufman.
Yeah, me and Alex go way back.
Oh yeah, we go all the way back in the Toronto poetry scene, which is a very funny thing to say.
Can I tell my first memory of you?
Tell me your first memory.
So I think so. It was Death Cookie Soup.
Death
That
Cookie
was
Soup.
Death Cookie Soup that was run by our good friends, and you showed up with a fez hat or a Marrakesh. I don't know which one of the two.
No, it was probably a fez. I was wearing a fez around that time, not knowing how problematic it was, but no one clocked me on it, so...
Yeah, you showed up in a fez hat and started reading your magnum opus, the USA all-round poems. And while you were reading Alabama, and you were just kind of keeling over with like a comical pile of unstapled paper.
Yeah.
And I just lunged forward and grabbed the mic before it like hit the ground, and you just told me, "Thank you, ma'am." And that was
I'm glad I can make that sort of impression. That's good. We're starting with compliments.
Is
Kramer's
that
complimenting.
one of your state thing when you're doing songs for the states?
yeah.
That was the one which is called "My Meat Tulip Blooms for You."
Like when you're up.
And I'm crooning. When you're
Gross.
down, when you're caught in a delirious frown, it's the changing exception. My meat tulip blooms for you. And that is how I know Kramer. And also, we talk a lot, mutual fondness for British panel shows and very obscure funds.
Well, I like QI, so...
Yes.
The weird thing
chat
is,
about
like,
QI.
even though we met then, which was like 3 or 4 years ago, for the first year, I think we started talking after the what I'm gonna call the Montreal Exodus.
The Montreal Exodus.
Yeah, when like 7 of our close friends just moved to Montreal.
Yeah, because it's cheap.
Is
And,
it? Is it
frankly,
cheaper?
better than Toronto, but we don't want to admit it.
Yeah, it's like after the Montreal Exodus, we just started talking. For like the first year that I knew you, we basically never had like a conversation.
Yeah. We're just hanging out at poetry shows and
I feel like-
acknowledging each other in the distance.
Montreal's where all like the tabletop gamers and the LARPers go.
Is it where they go?
Yeah, that's
Why
where
did
they
they
all
go
go.
there?
I don't know.
Is it
Like,
because being in sort of like medieval... It's sort of like medieval France if you
Yeah.
get out into rural Quebec
Exactly.
with more gravy. But,
Medieval France with more gravy.
yeah. Tabarnak. So here we got Charlie Kaufman. The reason why I tapped Kramer specifically is because he's one of his many hats is film person. And so we all watched this new movie that's come out on Netflix. I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman. And many of you know Charlie Kaufman for his work with Michel Gondry and Spike Jonze, Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and then his own 2 movies that he's directed are Synecdoche, New York, and Anomalisa. And he also wrote Human Nature and Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, but those ones don't really come up that much. They're not really part of the Kaufman canon, as people see it. But we got this new one for Netflix, and it's cheap as hell, and it's the same movie as all the other ones. But that's my early
With
review.
more references. It's got more references.
Yes, it's got a shit ton of references, and so we're here to talk about it because I'm a Kaufman head from way back, from when I was very young. But being older now, it's allowed me to have a lot of perspective on his work, and stuff that I thought was brilliant now I see somewhat of its era as well. Sort of the Scott Pilgrimification of culture for a while there was evident in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which involved pining for an orange-haired woman. But let's talk about the film first of all. So, first impressions, just, no spoilers. What did you think?
Well, honestly, sorry.
No, please.
Honestly, the first hour was the most horrifying, the most scary, like legitimately horror.
Yeah.
Piece of cinema I have ever seen. Like, I have never seen something that is scarier and more horrifying than that first hour. And I was legitimately, like, in the first hour, I think I tweeted like 7 times in the first hour. I'm like, this film is brilliant. Charlie Kaufman is brilliant. He's the master of horror. Yeah. And then I finished the film, and then I had to do like a lot of new tweets.
Had to do a mea culpa. Kaufman
it was scary.
Kaufman is flawed. Yeah, no, it is. What did you think, Steve?
I generally find his movies, I assume they're going to be comedies, sort of, or in some way a black comedy, and so I wasn't that scared, like, for instance, of like The Basement or whatever. I did get like freaked out a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I actually had a different at least the first 20 minutes, I was a little bit bored, and then when it started getting scary, I kind of perked up, and I was like, "Ooh, I think this is going to be good."
When they get to the parents' house, and
then it became, after it kind of disintegrated a little bit.
Yeah, because it goes a place where the film should have zagged. It should have kept its. We'll talk about when we get into spoilers of why this film sort of represents a problem and a dilemma in the Kaufman canon.
I like to think, like, Kramer, what would you give it out of 10 stars? How many stars out of 10?
I don't know. I don't think I'll give it, like, honestly, like, I don't know, 6 maybe.
Yes.
Just to give it a number, I'll give it a 6. But honestly, the first hour I thought it was really great. But then after, like, I think everything went downhill when they left the parents' house, and not only did it go downhill and it became not a good film, I was like, this is kind of worse than Joker in terms of what it's telling people. I'm like, at least Joker like knew that it was about spectacular murder, but this is like slacklining on the razor blade of alienation, and they're telling people like at least Joker is like, oh, the rich are bad, but this is like, oh, you can kill this. Like, the undertone of existentialism is always like, and solipsism is like, you know what, you're in such a hellscape that you might be able to kill every single person you meet, and that will like be okay because you're setting them free of this hellscape. And I'm like,
that okay, so that's it. I did not interpret it as extreme as that, but I think we need to get into it once we start synopsizing the plot, because it's very loose. Like, obviously, you don't really know what's happening. They don't really explain. There are, like, supernatural or dreamlike elements, I think, is the best way to put it in the movie, that aren't really explained. Like, you don't find out in the end that, oh, he uses the power of magnetism in order to make these things happen. Which is a feature of the movie that actually sort of works in its favor, because, I think being able to have multiple interpretations is always nice. When a movie like this, if you had explained it, I think it would have been way, way worse. It would have been like a 3.
This is interesting because it's also based on a book, and I'm wondering what the book is like.
Yeah.
Let me see who wrote the book.
But I would also give it a 6. That's what I always rate movies on IMDb, and that's what I gave it, was a 6.
I am going to give it a 7 exclusively because I acknowledge everything you say, but there is one thing about the movie which I love, and it's Toni Collette serving up a fantastic fucking... She's every time she's on screen, it's like, oh god. And you talk about the horror movie aspect of it, and old Miss Toni Collette, she's really selling it, she's doing a good job. Oh, I'm thinking about, what a distressed woman is feeling. And it's very.
David
I
Thewlis
was
also very great.
Yes, 100%. Like David Thewlis is always great everywhere.
Thewlis is on, yeah. But yeah, for me it was like she's just really acting, and not in like an overstressed way, but she's really delivering the tension that the scene requires. She's really shouldering that. Everyone's good in it. All the actors are good in it. Like, everyone really does a great job with their performances, so I can't fault that.
My mother, who is a psychiatrist, told me that, like, we watched this film together, and my mom was very, very, like, my mom has worked with, like, people with dementia and everything, and my mom was actually quite impressed with how well David Thewlis played an old man. And he's like, usually people with dementia is like very, like, it's very over the top. And like, he's like, this is exactly what dementia is like. They're like, David Thewlis is like playing a person with dementia so perfectly.
Yeah. And half lucidity, but also then unexpectedly saying something freaking weird and rude.
Are you gonna fuck in this bat?
Yeah, exactly. And also, just one other detail that I want to highlight of the movie is there's one scene where Toni Collette is in old age makeup, and it's the best old age makeup I've ever fucking seen. It's crazy good.
Yeah, they did good old age makeup. And then, of course, at the end scene when they do the on purpose bad.
Yeah. It's, so yeah, we're okay, so there's a lot to talk about this movie. Even though it is a miss, there is a lot to talk about. So let's synopsize it. Steven, you took notes, so you should
I took some notes.
I
took notes of like some of my favorite lines because there's some really over the top lines that the I guess it's the love interest. Are we going to get into spoilers now? If we're going to talk about
we're getting into spoilers. Okay. It's all spoilers from here on out. Spoilers. They don't really matter for this movie, but they kind of matter. It's sort of an experience. It's more of a dream-like day-to-day experience. There's no like big plot points.
Yeah, this is not unique in a Charlie Kaufman movie to say that it's all basically taking place in someone's mind. So, like every other Charlie Kaufman movie,
and a mind of a white guy.
Actually, a friend on Twitter was like, you know what? This is I'm thinking of ending things as just a single room in Synecdoche, New York.
Right. Yeah.
Alex said
this
that
is not
too.
This is not serious at any point. It was just a joke, but like. But
well, I mean, it's basically the same movie as Synecdoche, New York, but scaled way down, Netflix budget style.
There's a lot. There was some very funny lines to me that were really over the top that the love interest says. The ones I took note of were, "The sun goes up and down like a tired whore."
Yeah, that one was crazy. But
that one made me cackle. I love that one.
As we later find out, or do we find out? My interpretation. Okay, so let's start. It starts out with a young woman. They're about to go on a drive to meet Jake's parents. This young woman, we don't hear her name until about a couple of, about 20 minutes in, and at first they say Lucy, but then over the course of the movie it becomes Lucia and other such things.
Louisa.
She's never referred to as the same thing. Yeah. Yep. And so they're on this drive. They just have this very long conversation about... She's in her head. She's thinking, I'm thinking of ending things. I know this trip is going to end with, like, I don't want to continue this relationship. This is fatal, to me. And then she recites this long poem upon the prompting of Jake, the boyfriend. What's very evident about Jake is he's sort of like, he's sort of a snippy dude. Doesn't he, like, correct her on not being woke enough at one point? That's like a detail of his character that they keep inserting.
He said that something about how she was saying that homosexuality was a pathology, and he was like,
that's a recurring feature of his character. He's a sort of a control freak, as they later expand on in the movie. So they drive to this house. It's a big long conversation.
Also, fun fact is that poem is by a Toronto poet.
Hell yeah! What was it called? It was called Bone Dog?
Rotten. I don't know the name of the poem. The book is called Rotten, and it's by Eva H.D. Cool. It's a Mansfield Press book. Yeah, it's like a... is it a I think it's a Mansfield Press book. But yeah, it's like a... It's Canadian. Actually, I'm not sure if it's Toronto poet. It's just a Canadian poet.
Just a Canadian poet. Well, hell yeah, Charlie Kaufman. In the first of many references, many literary references, is this very long poem about why returning home is horrible, and it's called Bone Dog, and apparently it's from this poem collection Rotten by Eva H.D., who is a Canadian poet. But in the film, what she is portraying it as her own poem. And it's like, okay, so it could be her own poem. Not many people know this Bone Dog poem, so people will be like, okay, she made it up. So they get to the house. They get to the parents' house. And that's when shit goes sad. It gets much sadder.
It's just like a decrepit farm where most of the animals are either in the process of dying or fading into irrelevance.
Yeah.
I think she's like, asked the sheep, what are you even for, or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you even do?
Yeah. Before for some reason, Jake will not let her into the house right away. He has to stretch his long legs, takes her into the farm, and then they see some dead lambs as well. Yeah. And then he tells a story about the pigs, like growing up on a farm, how pigs had, like, they weren't paying attention enough, and then once they uncovered the pigs, they had maggots under their stomachs. And life on a farm is rough. And it turns out that pig thing isn't important because it comes back later in the movie. In actually a pretty nice sequence, a pretty wacky sequence. But so they finally enter the house, and they're waiting in the house for an excruciatingly long time before the parents come down. It's evident that they're arguing or something is happening that's keeping them from coming down. And so... the Lucy, or the love interest, the young woman, as she's credited in the titles as young woman, she just has this long, awkward conversation again with Jesse Plemons, Jake. The parents come down. They have a meal where it's just it's just a series of conversational set pieces a lot of the time. But then, after the initial meal, that's when time starts collapsing. And, like, you see people at different ages. David Thewlis, the father, you'll see him, like, very old. The mother, you'll see her very old. And then suddenly they're young. And the young woman character, who is essentially the protagonist, and has been portrayed as the protagonist throughout this movie, is experiencing sort of Jake's and the parents' life out of Unstuck in Time.
We have to insert that at various points we see a janitor at a high school.
You're right. Up. I haven't even talked about... Yes, parallel to this,
we are occasionally seeing a janitor cleaning up at a high school, who I assume to be Jake. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think the movie is not clear on many things, but it does make it pretty clear that the janitor is Jake. Right. The opening shot of the movie is Jake, the Jesse Plemons Jake, looking down at the young woman, and then in the next shot, it's the old man Jake, who's the janitor at the high school, who's looking down at the young woman in the car. So, yeah, I think this movie is abstract. That is one thing that it decides to make clear to the audience. And so, where you think the movie's going to go is that she's trapped in this house forever, and that there's something that she needs to do in order to, like, get out of the house. Which I thought that would have been a much better movie than what happened. I think. So eventually they do leave the house, and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, because I thought this was going to be like a horror movie where she's, like, trying to regain her identity or something, because she's the protagonist at this point. But then it just becomes much clearer that Jake is actually the one who's imagining all this. Specifically, the old man janitor Jake. It doesn't become clear, but that's what it sort of leads you to think. So what they do after they leave the house is they drive to Jake's high school. where the janitor, old man Jake janitor, has been all this time. And they go in there, and there's a ballet sequence.
Interpretive dance.
Yeah.
That's when the film lost me big time.
Yeah. That's when it became Wankfest, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The wank festivities began.
The young Jake, Jesse Plemons Jake, who's established to be a bit of an asshole, goes into the high school
and then disappears from the movie.
Because they make out in the car outside of the high school, and this makes young Jake imagines old Jake peering at them, which causes him to go into the high school and then in an attempt to beat up the janitor. The young woman, who's still the protagonist at this point, eventually leaves the car and goes into the high school and meets the old janitor Jake. That's when the dance sequence happens, where in the dance sequence, old Jake symbolically murders young Jake and steals the young woman away from her. And then after that, is there anything that I'm missing between that and when it turns into Oklahoma?
There's the pig. The pig.
Yeah, the pig. So, yeah, the old man Jake goes out to the car and attempts to start it, but then gets naked. And then sees an animated maggot pig get up and tell him that, you're not so bad, buddy, it's okay.
Snowball from Animal Farm shows up. And...
You're right. It's Snowball. And then young man Jake, played by Jesse Plemons, envisions himself in Oklahoma in front of everyone in the film, and they're all wearing conspicuously bad old person makeup, because it's, theater, and it's this is where it gets funny. And he's being awarded and applauded by everybody, and then he sings, I'm Gonna Get Me a Bride, I guess. I don't know the specific song from Oklahoma. But then the movie ends with him getting applauded, and the final shot is old man Jake's truck covered in snow. Oh, and all this time there's a gigantic blizzard happening, which I forgot to mention before. But that's an important feature of the movie, is there's always a gigantic blizzard happening.
Sorry.
That's as best I can synopsize the movie. What were you gonna say?
So Kramer. I'm gonna tell you my thought pattern. I'm gonna tell you why I think this is more dangerous to me than Joker, because
tell me.
So there is I'm gonna go back into the whole entire career of Charlie Kaufman, which is that he makes vulnerable dude movies.
Yeah, sad guy movies. All of his characters are sad guys who need women.
Yeah, and they're alienated. It's actually, one film that you didn't mention was Adaptation that he wrote. That's
yeah.
And all these films are about sensitive, young, basically self-entitled men who are really struggling to set themselves aside from the pack. Mm-hmm. And pretty much every single film ends with the profound horror. This is from the narrative of the film's view. I'm not saying it's from my view. But all their films seem to end with the profound horror of these people actually getting assimilated into the societies that they wanted to set themselves aside from. And they're oh, look how absolutely horrible and horrendous it is to not stand out and not be an individual. And what I wanted to say was I was thinking about this is something that I've been thinking about a lot in the past few months, which was I got into a lot of cosmic horror, and I personally read a lot of Charlie Kaufman as cosmic horror, which is it's not specific. I'm not specifically telling other people to read it that way, but this is how I read it.
Yeah, but your loneliness, torture demons, where do they come from? They seem to come from nothing, and you can't understand them.
Yeah, it's basically they all end with the profound horror of being assimilated into the consciousness of the cosmos, all that fragmentary nature. But what I was gonna say was that I realized first of all, like since this is like a audio recording, I want people to know like I'm Middle Eastern. I'm from Iran, so I've been reading a lot on Sufism recently, and I realized that like not just Sufism, but a lot of Eastern thought is specifically the antithesis to like cosmic horror, because like the Lovecraftian and like cosmic horror only works if you consider the loss of self into the cosmic consciousness as specifically and profoundly demonic and bad thing.
Yeah, you're right. And Buddhism is the opposite of that.
Yeah, like Buddhism, specifically like Mahayana Buddhism and like Hinduism, Zen.
Yeah.
And Sufism, all these are disciplines that where people spend decades and decades trying to assimilate themselves into the cosmos, and that is seen
they're
as
trying to do the human instrumentality project from Evangelion.
Yeah, and like I wish I had watched Evangelion, but
never mind. Real heads will get that one. I'm sorry, go on. I interrupted your fans.
No, but like what I see is like there's something like really, really bothersome here for me, because I started to look into like existentialism in general as well, like to like thoughts existential. Like anyway, I feel like there's this like middle class white like bored dude.
Yeah, bored art dude
monopoly on I'm like, don't you make existentialism actually like one of my notes on this film is like, don't you fucking dare make existentialism an instrument of middle class boredom, because this is like, I'm like well, first of all, existential is a very like in general, whenever in any art form I hear the word existential, I get a little bit nervous, because it's a bit of a scapegoat for profoundly criticizing any art form. But here, like, I feel like this existentialism, like, what bothers me is that when I said this is like about like killing everyone, which is there is a very small but logical step between an alienated person who wants to kill themselves and an alienated person bored with their existence and spectacular mass murder and suicide.
Are you talking about the Supreme Gentleman, Elliot Rodger?
I don't know who that is.
Good. Like, you are safe.
But like, for example, but like, I don't know if any of you have read, like, if any of you know Franco Bifo Berardi, but he has a book
I don't know Franco. I don't know Chef Boyardee. Who is he?
Oh, Franco Bifo Berardi is an Italian contemporary.
That's not his name. That's Franco Bifo Berardi. Is he like an Italian-themed 1980s wrestler?
Anyway, he's like
Franco Bifo Berardi. I'm gonna get sauce on you.
Yeah, people are like Bifo.
Yeah.
But yeah, he actually, like, honestly, listen to his lectures, and he speaks in the most stereotypically Italian accent I've ever seen. I'm like, this cannot exist. Someone is making this up. This accent does not exist.
No, this guy's just too cool to live.
Anyway, but he was like an old school anarchist and like proper and in the last 10 years or so, he's making a big comeback with his like he's a big Verso dude. All his books are on Verso, and he has a book called Heroes: Mass Murder and Suicide. And he breaks down every case of mass murder and suicide in the U.S. In the past, like, 15 or 20 years.
That's pretty cool. I am a true crime guy, so that sounds up my alley.
It's probably the best book I have personally read on mass murder and spectacular suicide. And, anyway, spectacular murder, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, the alienation that he describes in each and every single mass murderer is basically like, it reminds me of that, like, Camus has this quote on nihilist terrorism, which he says something along the lines of like, there used to be this ideal with which you used to walk to the gallows, but now you have to annihilate yourself for that ideal to ever exist in the first place. And he's like basically saying like these people have to annihilate themselves and others in order for their ideal to even exist. And Bifo Berardi, basically everything that I read into the mass murder and suicide, and honestly, if you think about it, that's like that scene in front of the high school. Honestly, honest to God, I was like, this is going to end with him killing her.
Yeah, it is very, and because the film is so loose and open to interpretation, I think you absolutely can conclude that this guy's a fucking creep. This guy's a murderer. Because they do portray old man Jake as, like, lusting after teens. And, you know, like, they venerating youth. And, you know, wanting stuff back. And during the dance sequence, there's an implication that he stabs somebody. He stabs, like, the dancer that's portraying young Jake. And whether that is, like, a literal interpretation of his memory of, like, a time when, like, he killed someone in a high school or something like that. You know, there's... Yeah. You can definitely draw that conclusion.
But yeah, there's, like, a very small but very dangerously discernible difference between someone who is... between existentialism and spectacular terrorism. Because... They're the same ideology like 90% of the way.
Yeah.
It's just all slacklining on the razor blade of alienation. And alienation in itself, I think, is a very strange idea. At least the alienation in this, like, for example, the Charlie Kaufman alienation is that, hey, why? He's like, I want to be the ultimate individual. And what's stopping me from being a happy individual is actually other people accepting me, which is kind of strange because you're like it's a paradox in itself because you're like, I want to be the ultimate individual and I can be the ultimate individual by assimilating into the society that does not accept me.
Well, alienation is the key word because that is the arc of all Charlie Kaufman protagonists. Yeah. I am alienated and I need someone... I need a human connection, and then I embrace this human connection through, like, weird parasocial means or through meta-natural means. Like, so we have being John Malkovich. Clearly, he is not in a happy marriage with his wife, Cameron Diaz, who's played as sort of...
what did you say?
I forgot Cameron Diaz is even involved in
Cameron Diaz she's great in that movie.
Best Cameron Diaz, hands down.
And so we have the John Cusack character. You know, he's puppeteer, he's art boy, he's sad, he's unfulfilled, his marriage is unhappy, and so he fixates on Catherine Keener, and that's the thing that will make him happy. That is the connection that he needs in order to be whole, you know, in order to solve his alienation. And then that movie further explores that because he gets into the mind of John Malkovich and literally becomes another person and experiences life from their standpoint. And, you know, eventually a whole group of people get into the mind of John Malkovich. And, you know, at the end of the movie, he's still fixated on Maxine, though. It's still about the woman at the end when he's invaded the mind of the little girl. And then adaptation, it's the same thing. It's himself, but he's getting obsessed with the lady who wrote The Orchid Thief, played by Meryl Streep. And then it sort of ends the same way, where he develops this parasocial relationship, or this mediated relationship. That's what it's like. You have a mediated relationship with women. Something happens in between. It's not real because you're either, you know, working for her, or she's your own memory of her, or something like that. That's the same thing with Eternal Sunshine. Sad art guy, this girl will give me benediction, but maybe I'm not because I'm mostly interacting with what I think she is. And that's what this movie is too. Eventually, like, I don't think you can come to... What is relatively clear in the movie, I'm thinking of ending things, is that the young woman is a total figment of Jake's imagination. Maybe she existed at one point, but the young woman we're seeing in the film is absolutely just a hodgepodge of Jake's idealized version of a woman.
But in that case, what bothers me is like what actually like one of I think my number one question was because like in the first hour, it's all about like I thought this movie was gonna be about suicide and like suicidal ideation, but
it's about a lot of stuff. It doesn't really. It hits you up with a lot of stuff. Why did you think it was going to be about? Because it's called "I'm Thinking of Ending Things," right?
No, well, basically in the first 20 minutes or so, basically every like couple minutes or so, the woman is saying, "I'm thinking about ending things." So you think like, okay, this is gonna. But other than that, like one thing that really bothers me is not bothers me. Something that I'm baffled by and I'm not sure about is. Correct, like tell me if this is like reading too much into it, but for example, like I'm talking this specifically because they talk about Gita Born and like DFW and like David Foster Wallace and all that.
Yeah,
I think so. I think. Well, certain parts of the film I look like for example, I watched the Oklahoma and the Maggot Pig and like the. Interpretive dance, like basically the last 30 minutes, and I'm like, I am not sure if this is sincere, if this is irony, or if they're actually imitating irony. Because like knowing Charlie Kaufman, I know that like he has a very strange relationship with irony, and like specifically because they like there's like David Foster Wallace in the house and a lot, and like. They talk about a little. I forgot what part of David Foster Wallace they talk about, but I know that like what they talk about has a lot to do with the irony. I mean, like they don't explicitly talk about, but like that book of essay says a lot about like death of irony and postmodernism and everything. And that made me think that maybe they're like imitating irony. Like I don't like again like it's when you because the last 30 minutes is so ridiculous to me that I'm like, I can't tell if this is sincere, if this is ironic, or if this is like a depiction, like a stage 3 simulacrum of fucking irony. I don't know what this is.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about because like they specifically reference in the film that all you are is like a collection of little movie viruses. Like you watch movies, you read books, and they just sort of get into you. And then everything you perceive is just through the lens of those mediated figures. So one big sequence in the room is that when they're still in the house, the young woman goes into Jake's childhood bedroom, and then you literally see all of the books referenced in the film, especially one big book. Front and center is Pauline Kael, that's another important signifier. That's the other thing about this movie is this movie... For being so dense and obtuse, it tells you what it's about constantly. Yeah. It's constantly hitting you over the head with, like, oh, this is what this movie about. We're specifically announcing it. Yeah. We're saying this movie is about Gita Born, this movie is about Pauline Kael. But actually, that's a sequence that I like in the movie, where they're talking about a woman under the influence. And the young woman character starts imitating Pauline Kael. Because what she is she's just a hodgepodge of Jake's... experiences with literature.
So I haven't seen that movie. That's a Cassavetes movie, right?
Yes, it is a Cassavetes. I haven't seen it either.
I looked it up. So you're saying, you haven't seen it because
I have seen it. I have seen it.
So is what Alex saying true that like in her criticism of the movie, she becomes the character from the movie? Is that kind of what is happening?
So no, she becomes the critic, Pauline Kael.
Okay.
She becomes it has Pauline Kael's mannerisms and. Views about it. Wait, so talk about what do you know about women under the influence, Kramer?
Wait, actually, before I say that, the moment they talk about Gita Born, I wrote down, "Don't you fucking dare say simulacrum." I actually like my notes. Like 90% of them start with "Don't you fucking dare." Like I'm like, "Don't you fucking dare say simulacrum." And
yeah, they mentioned quantum physics once, and then they don't really bring it up again.
Yeah, that confused me. Why are they physicists?
They let off with that in the trailer, too.
I thought that maybe she was going to be like an AI that he programmed or something, but there's no actual science aspect. Science is like a little bit of seasoning they sprinkle on to
Yeah.
that I didn't understand.
Actually, what was your question about Woman Under the Influence?
Well, no, just like, what do you think? Because so what they're doing in the movie is they're talking about the criticism of Woman Under the Influence, which is in itself, another stage of simulacrum separated from what this person actually thinks.
So
and what's its significance to this plot?
Honestly, like I don't remember much from Woman Under the Influence, but Woman Under the Influence is like a very seminal acting role for both Peter Falk and specifically Gina Rowlands, who plays that woman. But there is a lot of problematic, anyone who it's, I don't know, it's very it's Cassavetes. It's a lot of improv, and it's a lot of it's a lot of problematic exploration of mental illness.
Yeah, it's absolutely... Well, Rowlands was through the male gaze, It's a very male gaze depiction of women, right? Which is what the Pauline Kael interpretation is getting at. And then Jake refutes her, saying, I think, Peter Falk character, I think what he does for her is nice. He's trying to do something in that movie. Which I thought was interesting, because I thought that was Kaufman actually commenting on how he treats women in his movies, as sort of ciphers for the male character to get their depression rocks off on.
Yeah. With enough, he just puts enough self-criticism in there to try to squeak it by, in my opinion. The line that is the secret line for me in the movie that I think really explains the whole movie is that she realized that a hamburger is just a ground up cow, and that is kind of what the movie is to me. It's just that's what I've realized about the movie. It's just kind of like a ground up cow.
That is the best sequence in the movie, actually, where the janitor, Old Man Jake, in one of the parallel shots before the stories converge, is watching a very cheesy film. And
the Zemeckis was supposed
to
be...
Yeah. And then at the end of the film, just in huge font, it just says, directed by Robert Zemeckis, which is a great joke. There's another great joke in the film that I love, where as soon as they enter the house, Jesse Plemons, young Jake, puts his thermos in the bottom drawer where there's this gigantic drawer of thermoses, which I like, because that's a very nice specific detail about, how just families just have weird places and weird rituals where they put a drawer of thermoses. And that's also something that he does that I really like it when he does. When even amongst the dreamlike logic, there are these moments of very realistic attention. I think that's when this movie shines. Especially during the dinner scene. The dinner scene is really, really good, actually, with Toni Collette and David Thewlis and Jesse Plemons and Jessie Buckley, I think, is who plays the young woman. I think that's her name.
The dinner scene is very Texas Chainsaw.
Yes. Yeah, very tense. Yeah, which is why I thought it was going to go into... That's what I was really disappointed by, because Jessie Buckley's doing a really good job as the young woman. I wanted her to, I wanted the movie to be about her. I didn't want the movie to just be about Jake. And all of the promotional material it's about her. This is, Charlie Kaufman's first female protagonist movie, so maybe he will do something marginally different than just the last 5 movies he's done.
Yeah.
But no, we did not get a horror movie about a woman trying to escape her toxic boyfriend. See, that would have been good self-criticism, a woman trying to escape Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah, the first thing I did after I finished this movie was look up if he is married.
Is he married?
Yeah.
Oh my god, can you imagine being Charlie Kaufman's wife? I'm having my 5th panic attack of the day!
Yeah, he's married, all right.
Constantly correcting her.
Yeah, he seems a little insufferable, but maybe he gets everything out. Maybe he gets all the bad stuff out and just puts it into movies.
I've seen him in an interview. He seems like a normal dude. He just seems like your average, very neurotic Jewish guy that's very able to channel his neuroses into art.
Actually,
I mean, it's very personal because, like, clearly all of the movies are about his own fucking neuroses.
Actually, can I actually the main thing I wanted to say coming into this was I wanted to tell you guys that Charlie Kaufman has pulled Kojima.
Okay, how is he pulled Kojima?
Yeah, he's pulled a full Kojima because like he's been praised way too much, and then now he's been praised so much that he's been allowed to like make exactly what he makes without like any filters, and then he's pulled a Death Stranding. Right. This is his Death Stranding. Yeah, this is his Death Stranding.
Yeah, except for the fact that Death Stranding cost so much money, and this looks like it was shot for like $6. Which is another. I disagree with that premise, Kramer. I think Kaufman has lost the ability to garner amount of money because Synecdoche, New York, was shot for like what, 15 mil? You think?
No, it's not about the money. It's about creative control.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's It's
go nuts, Kaufman.
Yeah, it's about how much executives will allow you to make exactly what you want to make, as opposed to like how much money you get to make what you want to make.
Wouldn't it be funny if Kaufman started out with, and so yeah, the movie's about the young woman, and the Netflix executives, Charlie, your movies are usually about a sad guy. Just make it about the sad guy, you know? That's what people want. That being, I think that's what it seemed. It seems like a lot of more of the same, but scaled down from his other stuff, which is, if you're gonna do like a small, intimate movie, just don't do the same message you had with Synecdoche, New York, and Anomalisa, but way less visually impressive than either of those movies.
I don't remember Synecdoche. I don't remember Anomalisa. I just remember Wait, was that also David Thewlis?
That was also David Thewlis, yes. He was the main guy in Anomalisa. And was it Jennifer Jason Leigh and Tom Noonan was everybody else? But yeah, another movie where it said the difference with...
Sorry.
Yeah, the difference with Anomalisa is the alienated man in that one is not an art guy. He's a motivational speaker.
Oh,
that's
shit.
The other... Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I guess that's what really differentiates. So,
oh my god, how the hell am I going to stop this?
That's it. Punch yourself in the fucking face 80 times. 80 times. You're ruining the podcast. That's my catchphrase now. You're ruining the podcast.
The podcast.
I want to watch Synecdoche, New York again.
It's an intense movie.
I remember really liking it when I saw it.
It is great. I think it is a genuinely great movie. And it's sort of like the apotheosis.
I think I went and saw it alone.
Whoa.
But 2008 was when I was, like, as Kramer was talking about, like, the mediocre white man angst. That was peak time for me.
Yes.
For that. Oh, man. What a great time. I mean, it is a great time in one's life. Mm-hmm. When you realize, when you're just sort of struggling to figure out your way and refusing to realize that you should try to assimilate. One of our listeners, one of our very friendly friends of the pod, Dorian, put it to me best when he said he's just now figuring out how to live in this country after 22 or so years, or however old he was.
It's hard. It's hard to assimilate because a lot is expected. And I guess that's what you were talking about earlier, Kramer, is that not only is this about a person. This is about your desire to be inward versus your desire to look outward. Your desire to be solipsistic versus your desire to actually make connections and relationships with other people.
I think like all Charlie Kaufman films are the ultimate plight for individualism.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, whenever I hear apotheosis, I remember Herman Melville. It's like there's this like quote from Moby Dick which I have strangely memorized, but it ends with like, you know, like that quote from Moby Dick that goes, "Know ye now, Bulkington." Anyway,
I don't know that quote, Bulkington.
Yeah, it's like,
tell me that.
It's like no.
I'm glad you would assume that of me. Know me now, Bulkington. Do the whole quote. Do the whole quote.
There's a Twitter account you can follow if you want Moby Dick quotes. So.
Oh, I love Moby Dick. Moby Dick is my favorite classic. As strange because it's so strange. It's a third Shakespearean soliloquies at the ocean. It's a third like just like people doing things on the boat, and it's a third proper cetology. It's just like, a whale is this long, it produces this much sperm, and it's like you read like 5 pages and you're like, no, this is like straight up about whales. This is not about any plot or narrative. This is about a whale.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a musical like Cats, but it's gonna be about Moby Dick, and it's gonna be called Whales.
Oh, I thought you were gonna redo Cats, the musical, with just all of it being scientific facts about cats.
That would be pretty good. I'd like to do Charlie Kaufman's Cats, where like the depressed male cat, you know, meets a fancy lady cat with different colored hair, and then he just, you know, is in a corner taking a lot of nip.
Well, this movie it's the worst possible way of dealing with your situation in life, is to do what this guy did, which is to go insane and have a horrible inner life where your memories are having nightmares of spending time with you.
Yeah.
Memories. Oh, I'm going to write that down. Your memories are having nightmares.
Specifically being around you.
Yeah. Even the people that you create, it's like, have you ever been rejected in a dream? That shit is hilarious.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that is amazing, being romantically rejected in a dream.
Actually, let me tell you something about my queerness, which is, I should have known this about my queerness, but like, when I was in high school, all my friends were talking about girls and going out with girls, and they're like, hey, do you have any wet dreams? I'm like, never. Whenever I have a dream about a girl, she grows a dick. And then it took me like 5 more years to realize, oh, like there's a logic behind that. Like,
yes,
I've been queer all along.
Yes, that it's super hot. Hey, you're with Jim Norton.
Jim Norton talks about that?
Oh, yeah, that's Jim Norton's. He has got many jokes. His preferred partner sexually is a woman with a penis. Which is, you know, I've never had the opportunity, but I'm just putting it out there. I'd be down. I'd be totally down.
Let's turn this podcast into finding you the ideal partner.
There you go. I'm not saying a woman with my penis is my ideal, but
with your penis.
But I'm just saying, you know, a woman with my penis, that would be weird.
Yeah. No, she has your penis.
Ugh. I couldn't. Nah, that's the old Chappelle line. You know, I couldn't pick my own dick out of a lineup because all dicks. Like unless it's like different races, like I don't think I could pick my dick out.
If you could pick it by color, you mean?
Yeah, if I could pick it by color, like I mean, it's obvious. If like there's like a black dick, I don't even know if I don't know.
There's that great scene in what is the show by Phoebe Waller-Bridge?
Fleabag?
Fleabag. There's that great scene in Fleabag where her mother-in-law has made a wall of dick sculptures, and she goes up to one and she taps on it and she's like, "And this is your father right here." She just taps. And then I think she's like, "Oh wait, no, it's this one."
I remember I used to live with this friend, and we would go. Sometimes she would come home with a picture of a wall of dildos, and she would make me guess which one is the closest to her boyfriend's dick. I would always guessed it right.
What fucking game is this? What is the? I guess this is just art, you know.
Yeah.
See, if the Charlie Kaufman movie had about a bunch of ladies growing dicks, that would have been a better movie.
I mean,
See,
frankly,
this is the dream.
I would much rather watch Alien if I'm going to watch a movie about isolation.
Alienation. It's
just the movie Alien.
Yeah.
I would rather watch that than this one.
Wait, did any of you watch Tenet yet?
Not yet.
No,
no.
I refuse to watch
thought it
Tenet.
was going to be about CIA Director George Tenet and be a historical biography, and I was sorely disappointed.
Actually, Tenet is like I for one, as like an art house, like big art house guy, I love to hate on Christopher Nolan, but his films are great in the cinema. Like it's like pretty much like the best bang for your buck you can get for going to the cinema and watching a movie. What I think about him is that Christopher Nolan is a huge and amazing scene director, but he just sucks at directing like full-on films. Yeah. Like he has some of the best. Like, oh, actually, wait. I'm gonna say he's the best, like one of the best action directors I know, but he just sucks at directing drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his narratives are weird. Like, did you see Dunkirk?
Yeah.
I didn't see Dunkirk.
I loved individual scenes in Dunkirk, and I really liked most of the movie. But as a whole, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
but
like even if you
so
hate
well in parts, yeah.
Even if you hate, like for example, even if you hate the total premise of Inception, you have to admit it has some of like the best. Like for example, that like swirling corridor scene, or like all like he's a great scene director. Some of his scenes are just absolutely immaculate.
Nolan can do a set piece for sure. And no one's
And honestly, Tenet for me, like I said, I'm like again, I'm like prefacing this by saying like I'm a piece of shit snob that hates on like all like big films, but Tenet had like 3 or 4 of the best action scenes I have ever seen in my entire life.
No, that's the Nolan strategy. Is he comes up with the set pieces before he comes up with the film, and then the narrative is just linked to like the 3 or 4 big moments. Like you can see it, like Dark Knight Rises is like that. It's going to be a football stadium. We're going to blow up a football stadium. It's going to be great. And then we'll just build the action around it. Takes over the city, you know.
Did you guys see that piece of news coming? I think it was out of Czechoslovakia, that there's a town in Czechoslovakia and Tom Cruise wants to blow up their bridge for Mission Impossible 7. Like they have a historic bridge from the 14th century and Tom Cruise wants to blow it up for his movie. And there's an outcry in the town. But the town leadership is like, but then he's going to pay for a new bridge and we need a new bridge.
They do need a new bridge. I'm coming down with Tom on this one. Fuck history, embrace progress.
I guess so.
We gotta blow up old Czech bridges.
There's a town in Malaysia called Cyber. Was it Cyberjaya or Putrajaya? Okay, Putrajaya. Putrajaya built historical sites from it has like 30 or 40 historical sites from around the world rebuilt into this one city. Mm-hmm. So there's this and like they have like a mini Taj Mahal, and it's a really good Taj Mahal. And they have this pink mosque from like Iraq, and it's a really great pink mosque. And they have like one bridge from Iran. It's called Pol Khaju, and they have it. They just have it. They just built like 30, like 40 ancient, famous historical sites just in this one city.
That's very funny. I mean, if you would like to simulate the lair of a supervillain where they have stolen all the world's monuments, I think that is the closest that you're gonna get.
They have a really good Taj Mahal. Like I
Have you been to? Can you compare? Have you been to the original versus the Putrajaya?
No, I've not been to India.
You've just seen.
Yeah.
Have you been? Because you used to live in Malaysia, right?
Yeah. I lived in Malaysia. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went to. So you've been to Putrajaya.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay. Good Taj Mahal. I'm told there's a good Taj Mahal there.
In Malaysia, yeah.
10 out of 10, Putrajaya.
Actually, you know what? Like, Malaysia's all... Malaysia has one of the... actually, why are we getting into this now? Never mind.
Yeah,
what, the Malaysian film scene?
We've talked about the coffee.
We're going to talk about Malaysian film, or what were we going to talk about?
Oh, actually, Malaysian film is really dope.
Yeah, it is.
Like one of my so when I was in Malaysia, I actually got to work with my absolute favorite Malaysian director. Like he was an indie director, and I went up to him. I'm like, hey, I will like work for you, whatever, unpaid. And he's like, what? Like, don't like you can just help me out. I'll teach you things. You don't have to work for me unpaid. And like, it was like he took me as like his like main assistant on one of his documentary shoots, and like I helped him make it. But apparently, anyway,
Malaysia, what is this filmmaker's name?
Azhar Rudin, but like none of his films, like I don't think any of his films are available online, or like that's my problem. Like my favorite film from him, I ordered it from Singapore and it should be on the way. I had to order it from Singapore Film Archives, but like when like the great thing was that when I was in Malaysia, it was like in the middle of a film movement there. So they're like new wave film was like 3-4 years long. 3-4 their new wave of like film had started like 3-4 years before I got to Malaysia. So in the 2-3 years that I was there, I got to work on some of like the new wave of indie Malaysian films.
What are some titles that you could point us to?
Well, I have to look it up. Like, I didn't work on I worked mostly on short films, and I can but I only worked on one full length film, but it never released because
there you go.
It was supposed to be like a docudrama, and like a sort of like documentary about like a certain city, and like it weaves a narrative into it, and it never got released. And I think it's by that director that I told you about, but I think he's still working on it.
Who are like the big names in Malaysian cinema?
I think the first two that's like the one of the main ones that I remember is called Amir Muhammad, and oh my god, I'm blank. It's been a while. I'm blanking on the names, but like if you've ever watched like for example, there's this like very signature slowness and this like overtaking of nature and like landscape to like, for example, if you've ever watched, I don't know if any of you know Apichatpong Virasatako.
Yeah, I know. That's Uncle Boon Me who can suck past dick.
Yeah. So like, that is like, if you've watched that, his films are very similar to like the new wave of Malaysian film.
It's Uncle Boon Me who can recall his past lives.
I know. Yeah.
Okay.
Uncle Boon Me who can eat past chodes.
You should. If you
that is a great movie, Uncle Boon Me who can recall past lives. That's the only Indonesian film that I've ever freaking seen.
It's Thai.
It's Thai? Oh shit! I'm fucked up.
You're fucked up, man.
Yeah. Actually, wait. Indonesia. Like, I know. Two of my favorite action films were made in Indonesia, but are not by an Indonesian person. But it's like the two Raid films.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, they were made by Ja, but he's a Thai boy, isn't he?
By who?
The director
Tony
of
Jaa?
the Raid films?
No. They're not. The Raid films are by.
The Raid films are not. Who's
He's like
Tony
a
Jaa?
South African or something, isn't
Who
he?
am I? No, Tony Jaa is from Thailand.
Isn't
but
the
he's
guy
not
that
in
made the Raid
films.
movies South
Tony
African?
Tony Jaa made that like Muay Thai film that I forgot about.
Yeah, it's the one where he's getting back his elephant kickboxer. I have no idea, but he was
Ong Bak.
That's a good.
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Tony Jaa basically brought like Muay Thai, to like Ong Bak is a fantastic movie. Fantastic. But let me see, who did the Raid? The Raid was by, like, I think an Australian or English person?
It's Gareth Evans.
Gareth Evans, yeah, Gareth
Evans.
He's Welsh.
Welsh?
Yeah.
The Spaniards of the UK.
Is Gareth Evans from Clanbair Pokemon Go?
You memorized the whole fucking Welsh town name, you fuck?
I don't know.
You just whip that out anytime you memorize the long Welsh town name. Do it again.
Oh, what? You mean Clanbair Pokemon Go?
You bastard. You bastard! Nah. That's why we have you on, Kramer, for stuff like that. No, that shit's great. For anyone not in the know, there's an exceedingly long Welsh town name that is very difficult. On top of the syllables are very difficult to pronounce, but Kramer, you know, like how many languages you got under your belt? You got 3, 4?
I know 2 perfectly, but I know bits and pieces of a lot. Like I'm a big linguistics person. So I know bits and pieces of 10 or 11 languages, but I only
speak... But you got Farsi and English?
Yeah, Farsi and English are the only ones I speak fluently. French I can read a lot. German I can read a lot. I know bits of Swedish. I studied Swedish for a few months. I don't know why. I can understand bits and pieces of the Nordic languages, like Norwegian.
I can speak Swedish. The girl with the dragon tattoo.
Yeah,
that's what all the Swedes sound like. Yeah. Ingmar Bergman. So, here's the thing: has this movie, I'm thinking of ending things, caused you to reevaluate Kaufman?
Yes, definitely. I'm done with this guy.
So can we answer the question we posed at the top of this episode? Does Charlie Kaufman suck?
No. He's just
I don't think he should direct movies. He should just write
I think
them.
that is I think that is the correct conclusion. He should write movies and
he should be oppressed a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He has too much creative freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Too much creative freedom, man.
He needs to be reined in. He needs to do like a Softy Brothers and do an Adam Sandler movie.
Oh wait.
Oh, I'm a sad art guy, but when you think about it, a lot of Adam Sandler movies follow the same tack as Charlie Kaufman movies. Yeah. Where it's just like an alienated man-child who, in order to get better, he meets a woman and,
Oh, you know what I watched and I realized, so after watching I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I watched a Humphrey Bogart movie and I'm like, this is also the same. It's just sad art. I'm like, this is I'm overthinking how specifically novel this is. All of classic Hollywood has been this exact same thing. It's just
sad guy meets that's the weird thing about the invention of a manic pixie dream girl. Marilyn Monroe is a manic pixie dream girl by that. It's a very well-worn trope is lady comes in and becomes the light of my life and gets me out of my depressive hole. That's also 500 Days of Summer, or that's basically Some Like It Hot too,
Yeah, my depressive hole makes a good band name.
My depressive hole. We're like the Courtney Love band, but on Xanax.
Depressive hole.
I actually.
Sorry, I can't have sex. My hole is depressed.
Wait a minute. I listen to your podcast a lot. Were you I'm talking to you, Steven. Were you Swedish?
I mean, not by any way of measuring it, unless you get into weird race science.
What's your blood quantum?
My blood quantities are. I would say, I don't know. I have one grandparent who's fully Swedish. The rest is all. Sweet. I'm a mix of the whites.
Mix of the whites.
Yeah.
All the whites together. We got eggshell.
Yep. I'm a mix of them all.
We got pale horse. That would be
if I have to, if I'm forced by the new administration to list my ethnicities, I would be majority Scandinavian. No, plurality Scandinavian.
Plurality Scandinavian.
3/8 Scandinavian.
I like the idea of there are 8 guys in your mind and 3 of them are Scandinavians,
exactly.
and they're like
That's
they're
how
the
I think of
left-wing
it.
block on issues.
Because I'm 1/8 Jewish, so 1 out of every 8 jokes can be a Jewish joke.
There you go. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
So every 1,028 jokes, Elizabeth Warren gets to make an indigenous person joke.
Yes, that's true.
I heard a great tweet about that the other. I saw a great tweet where frickin' it's like, if you are 1,000 Native Americans, that means something bad happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't want to claim that in your ancestry. Yeah. So does Charlie Kaufman suck? Maybe he sucked this whole time, and we just needed the Trump presidency to bring it into stark relief.
The one thing I did like about the movie was thinking about how many dads, like 50-year-old dads, are watching it with their Zoomer college-age daughters and just getting into a big fight about it. It's like, I wanted to watch Ford versus Ferrari.
Wait. I thought it was going to be the opposite. That like I thought you were going to say like the girl's going to say like.
No, I bet that
she's going to get offended. I could see women getting offended by this movie.
The women would get offended by it, but then because their dads hate it so much that it's not just a plot-driven blow stuff up movie, that they are forced into defending it and then just feeling sort of debased again through the whole thing. It is terrible because it's going to alienate the women viewers of it as well, who will probably have to defend it without wanting to, because it sucks.
Just like the lady in the film is defending non-representational art or whatever. I don't remember. That was something funny you bring up. That now my train of thought has escaped me. Misogyny in the film. Is it misogynistic? Is Charlie Kaufman misogynistic? Does he just only view women as a means to an end of psychic benediction?
Redemption.
Do the women in his movies have characters? Like, does Clementine, that's what she's called in Eternal Sunshine.
Aubergine would have been so much better.
Yeah. But I guess you can... My girlfriend Aubergine broke up with me. I'm so sad, and I'm Jim Carrey. And then that girl OD'd at my house, and now I paint because I'm existentially tripped out. Maybe it's a curse to appear in a Charlie Kaufman movie. I'm not willing... I can't say Charlie Kaufman sucks, because I do think being John Malkovich and adaptation probably... for the strength of Spike Jonze as a director, are still really good films that still hold up. I think also because they don't, they're not as sympathetic to their pathetic male characters as this movie is, and other Charlie Kaufman directed movies are. Whereas, the John Cusack character basically ends with him being a creep. And adaptation, sort of just flies off the rails to the point where it's not even, in the realm of realism anymore. It becomes the schlocky movie that it made fun of, which is the point of it. And why is it so fun? That's what I like about adaptation, because its descent into schlock, into self-conscious schlock, actually makes it fun.
I just watched a movie much like that, Wild at Heart by David Lynch.
Wild at Heart? I haven't seen that, actually.
Wild at Heart, I watched it for the 30th anniversary. I went to the Royal to watch the 30th anniversary screening of that, and I actually wrote a whole ass list on Taste of Cinema. I'm like, why is Wild at Heart the most subversive David Lynch film of all time?
I had to rent it from the library. It's not available anywhere. I had to go to the library.
Yes, exactly. It is not. It is only available in like France in a VOD, and I literally got a VPN to buy it from France, and they're like, "You're not from this country."
No, they understand it there. Ah, yes, Wild at Heart, the greatest David Lynch movie. Also, Dune. Dune is the greatest David Lynch.
Honestly, Dune is like I'm
good.
gonna stand by Dune. Dune is good. Yeah. Like people
Dune
are hating.
Is good.
I don't know why people hate it.
It's weird. It's just because it's not a pure Lynch film. Like, it's very clear where producers meddled. But I think the movie is actually better for it because it is an anomaly in the David Lynch filmography as a result, and that makes it also fun to watch on a meta level. But that's the other movie news that happened is the Dune trailer. The Dune trailer with Timothée Chalamet.
It's like, what is in this box?
Yeah, take it or leave it.
What is in this box? Your pussy. Oh.
Take the
Chalamet.
I have low hopes for that.
Wait, you were gonna say something about Wild at Heart.
Well, in terms of the schlockiness, descent into schlockiness, I watched What was the movie, Alex? You were saying was
Adaptation has a self-conscious descent into schlockiness.
Yeah, David Lynch, that movie is very schlocky. At one point, I think Willem Dafoe's head is blown off. And it's amazing.
That's pretty good.
But it's a schlocky movie that I was extremely entertained by, whereas I'm not entertained by Charlie Kaufman movies.
I have a lot of big takes on like I actually spent a lot of time like dissecting Wild at Heart, and like I think Wild at Heart had a huge role in the new Nicolas Cage, like the Nicolas Cage that people like right now. They're like the vampires kiss Nicolas Cage. They're like the over the top Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I believe he calls his acting style neo-shamanic acting.
Basically, I think Wild at Heart was the first big one to come out of that. I mean, like before that, Moonstruck was a little bit like getting there, but it was still pretty much like 90% straight.
Yeah.
But Wild at Heart was like the first big film that he just, I don't know, maybe it was like the creative freedom or whatever it was, but it's the first real Nicolas Cage moment.
Like, the first unhinged Cage moment.
Actually, let me tell you something really like funny about the 30th anniversary. The 30th anniversary showing of Wild at Heart, which was before the film started. Someone came and said, "We know that half of you are here for David Lynch and half of you are just here to laugh at Nicolas Cage. We just know that both of you like really clash, and we've had a lot of trouble showing Wild at Heart in the past. That some people take David Lynch very seriously, and then some people just laugh at everything that Nicolas Cage will say in this movie. So we just please ask you to get along for this one night." And it was really true. Like to be honest, it's like the absolute most like laughable like dialogue for Nicolas Cage, and then you cannot stop not laughing. But also like some people are like, this is a David Lynch movie, and then we're here to like absorb this like absolute. But another thing that I really like about Wild at Heart, and like I think it's the best subtext, is how it, I mean, like in general, David Lynch is really good at using music and like what it represents in the film. Mm-hmm. What I really love about Wild at Heart is how it pits countercultures of different generations against each other. So like basically in the entire film, like Nick Cage like kind of represents like a Elvis character, and he's like really into rock and roll and like serenading his woman, and like he literally like he's like, oh, if we ever like become man and wife, I will sing "Love Me Tender" to you. And then the film goes like, the film has very interesting parallels between jazz, rock and roll, and metal.
Yeah,
because like the theme of the film is a new metal song. I forgot who it was by, and there's all these like metal mosh pits, and then there's all this like serenading like lounge like rock and roll, and it's like all these like how this like past countercultures have assimilated into the culture and have become the norm and are actually something that people aspire to. They're like in the whole film, like the Elvis character is something very like kind of like pious that people like aspire to, but like in the 50s he was like seen as the biggest like threat to American like piety, basically. And
Kramer, you just said the secret concept. The commoditization of dissent. That's the secret concept for every episode of House of Decline. Every time we come up to commoditization of dissent, we got to ring the commoditization of dissent bell. Ding 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 ding.
We can also ring the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction bell. Ding.
Yeah, ding 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 ding. Work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction bell. Yeah, ding 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 ding. Yeah.
That's Diego just perked up.
Yeah, well, we were making bell noises. Yeah. Diego is visible on the Zoom call. He's cute and distracting. Wild at Heart. Can we relate? Okay, so why is Wild at Heart a good movie?
It is not.
So I'm thinking of Ending Things is a bad
movie. Not good in terms of, like, if we're not talking about the technical aspects of filmmaking, but the character, Nicolas Cage's character, makes better decisions and has made better decisions in his life and is on a different plane of existence than the main character of I'm Thinking of Ending Things. The main character of I'm Thinking of Ending Things could never get with a woman of that caliber, and then if he did, would not make the correct decision to go back to her at the end. Instead, he would have to go off and continue being an individual instead of assimilating into family life, which is why I like Wild at Heart, because that's what he does at the end.
You know why I'm Thinking of Ending Things is so bad? It descends into sympathy for the incel.
Yeah, kind of.
Wait,
please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man. I'm the supreme gentleman.
So, like, actually, like, what I think is, like, Wild at Heart has a lot of discourse about American cinema, because I think, like, Wild at Heart talks of, I mean, like, even though I actually read, like, 40% of the novel that it's based on just to, like, write the criticism on Taste of Cinema. But I think one of the interesting things that, like, probably the most interesting thing that David Lynch adds to Wild at Heart is the entire Wizard of Oz storyline. That in the entire film, there's so much, like, parallels to Wizard of Oz, that, like, the mother is looked at as the Wicked Witch of the West, and, like, I think the going back, like, again, like, I know I'm so over irony, but I think it's ironic the way that Nicolas Cage goes back to Lula, like Sailor goes back to Lula in the end, because basically Sailor, like, in the end of the movie, I know you haven't seen it, Alex, but, like, I'm just going to tell you. So basically, like, he goes to jail, whatever, he comes out and meets back with Lula, which is his woman who has waited for him, like, for, like, 6 or 7 years when he was in jail, and he has a child, and he's like, we're not good for each other, I'm gonna go. And then he goes to a back alley, and a gang of comically interracial people, like, it's like, I'm not joking, it's like one black guy, one Asian, one, like, Middle East.
It was the 90s. Everyone had, there was the style at the time.
And these 5 people come and they literally beat sense into him. They beat him and he falls on the ground. And the good witch appears, which is actually Laura Palmer. I forgot the actor's name. The good witch appears, is like, don't give up on love, Sailor. And then he gets up and he's like, I apologize for calling you gentlemen faggots. And then, because, like, when the gang shows up, he's like, what you faggots want? And they beat him, and he's like, I apologize for calling you gentlemen faggots. And then he goes back to Lula and, like he sings Love Me Tender on the top of, like, it's like, in the whole film, like, aside from, like, the music parallels, there's also this parallels between, like, there's a lot of discourse about the American road movie, the American Western, and, like, specifically the Wizard of Oz. because The Wizard of Oz is the only thing from the film that is entirely new. There's a lot of small things from the book that has been changed, but it's like so small that it doesn't make sense. But The Wizard of Oz, like polarity of like that, and the binary of the good, bad, and like how a lot of things are basically it's like The Wizard of Oz is taken as the ultimate moral compass for this movie, and therefore like for like the American like cinema, and it's used as like a ruler to like basically guide all these characters through this like
Okay, so you say moral compass, and I think that's an important thing as to why sort of the films of David Lynch are very, even though they're hard to watch, they're easy to watch compared to a Charlie Kaufman film, because
yes,
they're more visually arresting. Two, the characters, there's a sweetness and a warmth to David Lynch that you don't find with Charlie Kaufman, who pretty much hates all of his characters. All of his characters are him, and he hates himself. So he doesn't really root for them or want them to succeed, and he sort of injects that into his own movies as well.
I actually have a theory for that, because I think one thing that I really like about David Lynch is that he intentionally does away with subtext. Whatever is subtextual, he makes it very explicit to a point where like you don't have to think about what it's about. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think it's about, so you can just watch the movie. And there's a profound sincerity in doing away with subtext, and I think actually that works very well with Nicolas Cage and where he goes from this onward, because Nicolas Cage is the exact same. Nicolas Cage like does this incredibly intentionally superficial performance and over the top performance, and in his artificial performance he becomes somehow the ultimate sincere, like it becomes 10 times more sincere, as if he was genuine, as opposed to if he was going to try to be like a lot more calculated.
The same thing happens in Twin Peaks, where you have these over the top characters, but if you like infuse them, these over-the-top characters, with real... See, that's the difference, is, like, David Lynch believes his imaginary characters are real, and so he treats them with gentleness and this sort of hopefulness for their future and outcome. Whereas Charlie Kaufman, the figments of his imagination, because they're transitory and because they're existentially meaningless, are sort of treated with derision, and they're left to sort of rot, because at the end, it is a solipsistic tale. He is the only person. I mean, the movie ends, I'm thinking of ending things. It ends with the Oklahoma, where he's like, the song is about, I need to get out of this room, which is my head, and find myself a bride. You know, it ends with the guy sort of determining that you need human connection in order to live. You know, it's an anti-solipsism message, but because you just inhabit the mind of this guy who is so wrapped up in his own shit to the point where the moral direction or the goodness of anything doesn't even come into question. You know, it sort of leaves you empty, little lacking.
Yeah.
But Synecdoche, that's what it's weird, because Synecdoche's like that, but because it's just so much more, and because it just piles on everything, including like references and allusions and especially images. That's the other thing that David Lynch does, is that you say his stuff is surface level, but he communicates that through images. Charlie Kaufman is dialogue. He communicates everything through fucking dialogue, which is why the movie is not as visually arresting as it could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first note in the watching the film was, quote unquote, quote, "Ilmet by moonlight my ass." An homage to text. Well, it shows. Like, that's the first.
That's shady.
It's like, I don't know if you remember the first 10 minutes. It's like, oh, my face ill met by moonlight. I'm like, I fucking hate you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's something.
She knows too many words. As I have a note here. There's too many. You know, you learned too many words, and you have an overabundance of expressive ability, which is it's a terrible handicap to have.
Gotta be deadpan. So we're coming up around the hour and a half mark, which is where we usually end things. So let's just final review.
Are we thinking about ending things?
Not anymore.
This movie, I wouldn't say don't watch it, because I think it's worth watching. It produces a fruitful... There's enough in it that it's interesting. It's not an abject film whatsoever, hence the 6.5s and 7s. There's a lot to criticize in it, because it is disappointing. It does feel like it could have gone somewhere better, especially with the fact that the protagonist turns out to just be another sad man, as opposed to, like, a trapped lady. I wanted a trapped lady protagonist, not a sad man protagonist.
Trapped lady.
That's what the trailer gave me, was trapped lady protagonist. What are your guys' final thoughts on
it? Yeah, definitely watch it if you have time. I would say there are better things you could do, though. You could watch Alien for the 4th or 5th time. You could watch Predator for the 16th or 17th time.
You watch Alien versus Predator
Alien
for
versus
the
Predator.
30th time.
It is not a standout performance by Jesse Plemons, which is what I was hoping for, because
he's good. I like him.
Like in the Breaking Bad sequel.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh no,
in that.
Is it
the
movie sequel to Breaking Bad?
Yeah, he's the best part of that Jesse Pinkman movie.
He sings a Dr. Hook song while driving. Whoa, whoa, that's perfect. And he does some singing in this movie that, meh.
I mean, there's that one great scene in the Jesse Pinkman movie where he takes the belt he used to strangle a guy and then just puts it back on casually, which I think is extremely funny.
But it's
what I think Jesse Plemons does for this movie is that he just acts like a not David. What's that guy's name?
David Mamet?
No. What Hoffman?
Charlie?
He's just
Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's just a big doughy Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, he's just a Philip Seymour Hoffman stand-in in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts on I'm thinking of ending things?
I'm saying young people should not watch this lest they go and shoot up schools. That's that's like, okay, we laughed at it, but I think it's problematic, but I also think it's like something that people should watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's like one of those things where you should watch to know, like, it's a cultural product. Like, it's a kind of like a Tarantino movie. It's a cultural product that is big enough and important enough to watch just to be able to talk about the ramifications of its popularity. Because
that's fair.
Because like I have watched I hate Tarantino, but I watch every film that he puts out because you're like, this film's being the most popular him being the most popular auteur in the world right now. What does that mean? And what does his films being the most important release mean to like the world of cinema and the world of cinema?
Yeah, in the same way that I would encourage people to say watch a Michael Bay movie, but not watch whereas Brent Ratner movies are totally discardable. Michael Bay inhabits a very important part of the film canon, which is
honestly, Michael Bay's like Rock and Armageddon are just like apps like.
We can all agree.
Amazing.
Everyone agrees The Rock is an amazing movie.
You know what?
It's a string of pearls formation.
Bad Boys 2 is like if I had to call a single film a guilty pleasure movie, which I don't have, I like a lot of films. But if by other people's standards, a guilty pleasure movie for me is Bad Boys 2 because I think it's just such an awesome movie. But I'm not saying
shit
that
just got real.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, it's time to end the episode, but
I'm thinking of
any
ending
plugs?
things.
Kramer, do you want to plug your Twitter or to all of our 8 listeners or anything?
Well, find me at Dear Kestrel.
Nice.
Anywhere.
All right, we'll put it on our show notes.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on, Kramer.
Thank
we love
you so much.
No
Happy to
worries.
have his guest. Charlie Kaufman. He sucks. We figured it out. Okay. Yeah, that's fun.